Welcome to the second Learning Mashroom Server lesson. This time we are going to add some common services to our server for security, session handling and monitoring. The goal is to secure our small web app from session 1 and only allow access by authenticated users. Then we will see how to access those services via plugin context and how to get user information in a root. And we will see how to gather metrics for our web app. We start with the code from lesson 1. Something I forgot to mention in lesson 1 is that instead of using a separate Mashroom JSON for the plugin definition, you could also add it directly in package JSON under property Mashroom, like this. But a separate file is easier to maintain. First of all, we are going to add the documentation plugin because we need it for the configuration of the shared services. So add Mashroom doc static to the dependencies and run npm install and npm start. And then you will see a new documentation entry in the admin UI. Go to the HTML documentation and to the plugin documentation where all plugins shipped with Mashroom Server are listed. As you can see, to add the security, we need to add the Mashroom security package as a dependency. And we also need some provider plugin. Default is the simple provider, and to add the simple provider, we have to add this package. Furthermore, we need some login page, otherwise the user cannot authenticate. Luckily, there is a web app plugin with a simple login form, the Mashroom Security Default Login web app. So we need to add that as well. Let's add those 3 plugins and also their configuration objects to the server config file. Actually, all plugins come with useful defaults and you could omit this configuration here, but I added anyways for more explicitity. The security service expects a config file with the access control list. Let's create an empty one. And the simple security provider expects a config file with the users, so create it as well. Now run npm install and npm start again. If you check the plugin page in the admin UI, you will see some plugins are failing because they depend on some non-existing plugins. Where does this come from? If you check the package JSON of Mashroom Security and the plugin definition there, you will see a requires declaration. This is a hint to the plugin loading system that other plugins must be loaded first. You could now check the documentation again where those plugins come from, but coincidentally, I know that by heart. So we have to add Mashroom storage, a storage provider, a session middleware, internationalization services, and the browser cache services. And also some basic configuration. Now try it again. And voila, all plugins are running. If you check the plugin loaders in the admin UI, you will see that we have a few new plugin types such as security provider, session store provider, and storage provider. There are also two middlewares for session and security and a bunch of new services that can be used from the plugin context. We will see that later. If we open our web app now, it is still available for anonymous users, which is no surprise since we didn't actually configure some security rules. Let's do this. Open ACL JSON and add a rule for the path web app 1. For all HTTP methods, that's what the star means, only allow authenticated users. Authenticated is a role which all authenticated users have. Restart. And a login screen will appear. But we don't have any users defined yet, so open users.json and add some. Because we are lazy, we just copy the users from the Mashroom portal quick start template. The password hash is the SHA-256 encoded password. Restart. And now you can log in as John and password John. If you check the cookies, you can now also see a connect SID cookie that corresponds with the user session on the server side. Because it's more fun, we would like to greet the actual user instead of just everyone. So how can we access the user context in our web app? Check out the services in the admin UI. There is a service available under security servers with a method getUser. Let's use it. Open web app TS and access the service via plugin context. We have to use optional chaining here because the security service might not be loaded yet or not exist at all. You can omit this check if you add the security service to the required section of your plugin definition. Now get the user display name and use it in the heading. Open the web app again. And you should see the username instead of everyone. We could of course also use the service for more fine-grained security and check if the user has some specific role to hide something or to show something in a different way. And now quickly add some metrics so we can check the vitals of our server and how many sessions and requests we get. Add Mashroom Monitoring Metrics Collector and Mashroom Monitoring Prometheus Exporter to the dependencies. Run npm install and start the server again. Reload the web app a few times and then open the metrics path. And there are already a bunch of metrics in the Prometheus format, like the number of requests for your web app, request duration, and status codes. You can also find the current sessions here. All what is left to do is to configure Prometheus to scrape your metrics and configure a nice Grafana dashboard and alerting. Like this. For example, to visualize the request count for your web app, just copy the metric into the Prometheus Explorer window. And that's it. Security, session management, monitoring, all in 1 hour tops. Some final notes. You should not use the simple security provider in production. Instead, use the OpenID Connect provider, which supports most identity providers, or the LDAP provider, which also supports Active Directory. To enhance the security, you might also add the Helmet middleware plugin and the CSRF plugin. You should always protect the admin UI with an access rule and only allow administrators to access. You can find the source code for this lesson in a public Git repository. I will add the link to the comments section.